is hard to know which is more astonishing. That John McCain does not outright deny he told a joke in 1986 about a woman who enjoyed being raped by a gorilla, or the defense that McCain's campaign offered today for that joke and others. Our third story tonight. First, the so-called joke. Quote, "Did you hear the one about the woman who was attacked on the street by a gorilla, beaten senseless, raped repeatedly, and left to die? When she finally regains consciousness and tries to speak, her doctor leans over to hear her sigh contentedly and to feebly ask, 'Where is that marvelous ape?'" That was 1986. Here is today's non-apology from a spokesman who said McCain does not recall telling the joke. Not that McCain didn't, couldn't, wouldn't tell such a joke, but, quote, "He's long said he's said and done things in the past that he regrets. You've just got to move on and be yourself. That's what people want. They want somebody who's authentic, and this kind of stuff is a good example of McCain being McCain." Apparently a rape joke is authentic McCain. Authentic also in his jokes about war with Iran, a war that would kill Americans and, as McCain joked on camera, Iranians.
We've learned that the exports to Iran increased by tenfold during the Bush administration. The biggest export was cigarettes. Given that supposedly
that's a way of killing them. I meant that as a joke.
McCain is often praised for self-deprecation. He now also has a record of picking on those who were close to him, his own staff, and those unable or less able to defend themselves, the elderly, even before he began to join their ranks. And frequently, it seems, women, including not only his own wife with an "I stopped beating my wife" line earlier this year, with an unrepeatable word years ago, which he denies, but also, as we mentioned, rape victims and even an 18-year-old. Chelsea Clinton, McCain's target of choice for a 1998 Republican audience for a joke about how ugly she was, a joke that also attacked another woman, Janet Reno, a joke for which McCain later had the decency, if not the authenticity, to apologize. Let's turn now to MSNBC political analyst Rachel Maddow, host of her own program weeknights on Air America. Good evening, Rachel.
Hi, Keith.
McCain's spokesman writing this off as authenticity, but if you're telling hurtful jokes about victims, isn't authentic the last thing you want to be? I mean, who defends a rape joke saying, in effect, "Lighten up, I did mean it"?
You know, I interviewed Ben Smith from Politico.com about this today. I called him specifically to ask about that because I almost couldn't believe that that would be a campaign's response to something like this. That a campaign would respond to their candidate being accused of having joked about how much women love being raped by saying, "That just shows how authentic he is. That's just McCain being McCain." And what Ben says is that they really meant the McCain being McCain explanation as a generic, general response to the sadistic and mean comments that McCain has made like this over the years, but it's not specific to the rape joke, which completely leaves the problem as it is. I mean, essentially, they're still saying this is authentic McCain. This is McCain being McCain. And if you want him to be president, you should know that he likes to pick on women and mock 18-year-old girls for their looks. It implies that they think that his sort of sadistic streak is part of what we ought to like about him.
Well, that's called appealing to the base. Yesterday, McCain was asked whether he would fill out the NAACP survey. He said he fills out literally every survey. It was a quote, literally. But not the AFL-CIO survey on working family issues, not the American Association of People with Disabilities survey, has not responded, not even the survey from Project Vote Smart, which was one of the groups he sat on their board until he refused to answer their survey. If you throw in the rest of that record and the pastors he threw under the bus, where is he in terms of authenticity capital? How much does he actually have at this point?
You know, if anybody's interested, there is a kind of fascinating presidential campaign that could use some reporting right now, because it involves a candidate who changed his position on Bush's tax cuts, who changed his own lauded position on immigration reform, who changed his position on whether or not U.S. troops should leave Iraq if the Iraqi government ever asked us to, changed his position on whether Afghanistan needs more troops, who changed his position on torture, who changed his position on which football team's linemen he named when telling his torturers something to put them off the scent of the real names of his squadron. If you're trying to catalog John McCain's authenticity as a candidate, there is a fabulous collapse happening right now in American politics that is just waiting to be cataloged if anybody's interested in covering it.
All right, well, let's say I'm not, and I'm more interested in where he stands actually in terms of women's groups and women's issues. When this joke came to light back in 1986, at that point, even then, women's groups were associating it with his then poor record on those issues. Has he improved on the substance in the intervening, decades?
Well, he's improved to the extent that sometimes the things that he is saying and his campaign are saying that are not true about his record, sometimes those falsehoods about his record are better. For example, Carly Fiorina recently said that John McCain would support requiring insurance companies to cover contraception if they also covered Viagra. She implied that McCain would support that. Turns out he voted against that. John McCain suggested recently that he's all in favor of equal pay for equal work, so that women get paid the same amount as men would do for doing the same job. He suggested that he's been in favor of that and his record reflects it. Problem is that he's voted against that every time he's had the chance to do so. So his falsehoods about his record are getting better for women all the time. What he's actually done and his actual positions aren't improving.
And of course, lastly, the WWTMD question. What would the media do if this had been a joke from 1986 that suddenly came to the surface that had been told by B. Obama?
We would be in 24-hour special coverage right now, right? Just trying to keep up with the media juggernaut on this. I mean, what we've seen so far to compare this to in terms of something crude is Jesse Jackson saying something off camera about Barack Obama, and that gets 4 days plus of coverage. For something like this, it's here, or you got to check the blogs.
Rachel Maddow of MSNBC and Air America, who may now repeat that old advertising punchline, I got my job through the New York Times. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Keith.